Hey guys, it's Austin with Out Jeeping. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to install a transmission cooler on your Jeep Cherokee XJ. So the transmission cooler we're going to be installing today is the Hayden Rapid Cool transmission cooler, and this size is going to be 678. So we'll open it up. As you can see, we got some hose here that we're going to need to attach the cooler in. Then under here we have the cooler instructions. We have the transmission cooler itself, along with a bag of hardware. And it looks like we got a few hose clamps in here, a couple spacers. They got some zip ties. These zip ties are a little bit different. They basically attach your transmission cooler to your radiator, so they go through the fins, and they got little plastic tabs in the back that go and tighten it all up. Another thing you might need is a couple barbed fittings. Here I got two brass 3/8 fittings, and then I got some extra 3/8 hose just in case. Now, looking through the instructions that Hayden provided, they have a couple diagrams on how you can hook up your transmission cooler. So they got two figures right here. One of them is an in-series installation, other one's a replacement. And today I'm going to be doing an in-series installation. Basically what that is we are keeping the heat exchanger tapped into the line that's in the radiator. So basically you have the fluid coming from the transmission, which is your hot, and then it leaves the heat exchanger in the radiator and then goes into the transmission cooler, and then leaves the transmission cooler and goes all the way back to the transmission. Now, if you live in a place where it gets really hot and you don't really have cold winters at all, you could probably just bypass the radiator and all, which is what this one is basically right here. And instead of going to the radiator, it just goes to the transmission cooler and then back to the transmission. So now the next thing we need to figure out is where we're going to place the transmission cooler. Now on the Jeep Cherokee XJ right here, we have a mechanical fan on the passenger side behind the radiator, and then we also have an electric fan on the driver's side. So since I live in Wisconsin, it gets pretty darn cold here in the wintertime. So if I just have the transmission cooler on the mechanical fan, it's always going to draw, and it might be too cold during the wintertime and never warm up the transmission. So I'm going to put it on the driver's side over here, and the electric fan only kicks on when the engine gets pretty warm, but I'm actually going to hook the electric fan up to a manual switch, so whenever I'm wheeling I can flip it on if the transmission is getting a little bit warm. So looking under the engine right here, we have two transmission lines, and the bottom one is going to be our return line from our radiator. So we're going to be tapping into this line right here. And how it looks on the radiator side is there's going to be a line going in from the top and a line going in from the bottom. Now, since my Jeep is a 2001, the return line for the transmission is going to be coming out of the top of the radiator. Now, I believe on the older Jeeps like the Renix, it's actually switched around. I think the bottom one is going to be the return line on the radiator. But for this Jeep right here is where we're going to make our splice. We're basically just going to cut it right here and put our two barbed fittings, and this is going to go to the transmission cooler, and then the return from the transmission cooler will go to the return to the transmission. So I'm going to start by taking off the grill so it gives us room to work. And before we take off the grill, we actually have to take off the headlight bezels because they're overlapping it. And it's just going to be a couple Phillips screws. So then there's going to be 4 screws along the top, and then the bottom is just clipped in. Alright, so when mounting our transmission cooler, we can do 3 of 4 orientations basically. I'm going to be orientating it like this so that I have the transmission lines coming in from the driver's side. You basically just don't want it that you have the transmission lines entering from the bottom, because this way you would have a bunch of air stuck up in this top portion and it would not be able to come out. Now, when I install it like this, if you have the lines on the side, you want to make sure that you put the line that's coming in from the bottom and the line that's going out on the top. If you were to do it the other way around, you would be forcing fluid down, and if air gets caught in there, it could cause a bunch of fizzing and stuff like that. So I'm gonna be mounting mine like this so that it goes out to the driver's side, and then the entry line is gonna go on the bottom, and then the return line is going on the top. So I have the transmission cooler in place on where it would be. Now if I want to get this done fast, they provide these little zip ties that would basically just go through your radiator and your AC condenser if it's right up in front like mine is, and then you can put a little zip nut on the back and it would draw it nice and tight. And you could do that, but I've heard stories of it just actually vibrating and actually creates a hole in either your AC condenser or radiator. So I'm actually going to be fabricating little mounts that come off from the bottom and top that go into these holes right here to hold the transmission cooler in place. Now when mounting this, either if you use these zip ties or you make your own bracket, you want to make sure you at least have a 1/4 inch gap in between the AC condenser or radiator from the transmission cooler. That way you'll have proper cooling and heat will be able to escape better. Alright, so I found out the best way to mount the transmission cooler. I cut a couple of these 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch pieces of flat stock, and they're about 16 inches long on both sides. And what I'm basically going to do is drill 2 holes up here, 2 holes up here, and then they're going to bolt to the transmission cooler. And then I'm also going to drill 2 more holes on the bottoms of these pieces of flat stock, and this is going to bolt to the Jeep. Now this is going to bolt to the front cross member of the unit body right behind the front bumper, and there's a few holes there already just for the factory, or you can go and drill more holes there to tie these in. That way this should keep it nice and sturdy and it won't be flopping around or grinding into the condenser or radiator at all with those zip tie things. So I'm going to go ahead right now and drill a couple holes, make sure they're all lined up here so everything's nice and straight. I'm going to get these holes done first, and then I'm going to test fit it, and then I'm going to mark where to drill the holes here to match on the body. Alright, so this is the test fit of what I have for the transmission cooler right now. I was messing around with the brackets a little bit just to get it all right, but as you can see I got 2 bolts on each side, kind of hidden there, and then 2 on the other. So now underneath here on how I attach it to the Jeep, I got 3 bolts total. I got only 1 in this bracket. I drilled a hole, but there's just going to be not enough room for me to get a drill in here since it's already on a severe angle. Next time I take off my bumper, I'll just add the bolt then. But I was able to get 2 bolts on this side, 1 down here, and then there's already an existing hole up here on the body, so I did not have to drill that one. So I got 3 bolts total holding the transmission cooler to the Jeep. I think it should be fine with only having 3 down here for now. It wouldn't be rattling around because actually the top of the transmission cooler is kind of like locked into the header panel a little bit with a little tiny lip. Alright, so here's another look at the brackets I made. I actually had to put a little bit of a S-bend in them just because the trans cooler was sitting a little bit forward and hitting the header panel up front. So I put a little bit of bend so it sits back further towards the radiator more. So now I got it out, I'm going to go and paint it so it doesn't rust, and then I'll reinstall it. Alright, so now we're going to cut this line right here so that we could tap in our transmission cooler. And I'm just going to do it about the middle section of this rubber hose. I don't have a proper hose snips right now, so I'm just using these tin snips, and they seem to work the best. Make sure you have a little pan underneath in case some transmission fluid leaks out. Just gonna clean that off real quick. And then we can take our barbed fitting and fit it in the hose. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So once we got our barb fitting on, you can take a hose clamp that was provided in the kit and then tighten it up on this side. Alright, so now we can take some new line and then we can connect it to the fitting right here. Now we can slide on another hose clamp and then tighten it down. Then we can do this line too. So now when we got our new hoses attached, we can route these to the new transmission cooler. So I got the transmission cooler back in there and it's all mounted up and plumbed with all the hose. As you can see, I have it connected down there and up in there. And then I have the hoses running down on the driver's side through here. And then they come out underneath on this front plate of the unibody and then go through the hole up there. And then they come to the connections that we made earlier down there. So as you can see with that bracket that I made, that this thing is nice and strong. It's barely even flexing at all, and that's taking a lot of weight. And there's no rubbing at all. And I checked if the grill fits, and it does. So next thing we're going to do is start it up and check for any leaks, and then top off the transmission fluid. And then we can put the grill back together, and then we should be done. Alright guys, that's a wrap for today's video. As you can see, it didn't take too long at all. The longest part obviously was just making that bracket for the transmission cooler. But if you were just to use those zip tie things, you could probably get this job done within an hour. It doesn't take too long. So, I hope you guys liked the video. Please like and subscribe to the Out Jeeping YouTube channel and comment below if you have any questions. Till next time, I'll see you guys in the next video.